So, hi everyone, welcome to this session. As you know, UI5 supports both OData V2 and OData V4, and both of them have their pros and cons, but both of them are still going strong. And today we will learn something about two new features that have recently been developed for both models. So one of them is the inline creation mode for tables, and the other one is deep create to simplify the creation of subentities. And so now let's welcome on stage two OData experts directly from the SAP models development teams. We have Patric Ksinsik and Uwe Reeder. Welcome, over to you.
Or empty lines in a table, which you can use for quick creation. Yeah, so you're inside the table, you don't need a create button or some dialog to do that, but directly from within the table you can do it. And the relevant API is the OData list binding create. So from your table control, you can via the items or rows aggregation, for example, get yourself the list binding and call a create, which is already available today. And now we have introduced a new inactive flag parameter, which you set, and by this you get an inactive context, and this creates an inline creation row in the table, which becomes visible and which can be used for creation. The important characteristic of this inactive context is that it's not a pending change, so it will not lead to a request. It's not considered a pending user input or so it will not vanish when you reset changes, for example, so that it will always stay. And how is it activated? It is activated on a property update. So once the user edits something or enters a value in this row, changes a value for this context, the property, the context is going to be activated and behaves like a normal created row. So it will send a request, and it will also be reset when you reset the changes for your model. And the point in time when this property update happens, the list binding fires create activate event. So your application coding can intercept via a corresponding event handler and can, for example, create a new inline creation row. So the one which is activated is, so to say, already created, and you get a new one so that the user can quickly create more than one entry and can continue with the creation. In addition, we have a use case called required properties. And also in the event handler, you can check the changed entity, the inactive entity, if it has required properties, because there are cases where the backend requires some properties to be there when you trigger the creation. And you can, by canceling the event, you can keep the context inactive. And by this, ensure that if a certain property is not available or these required properties are not yet entered by the end user, the context will only be activated when this is done. In addition, we have some APIs introduced so that you can find out about the status of the context. So is transient and is inactive, in order to know what the actual status of your table row is. Yeah, we will see this in the demo. Later on. Yeah, you find more information on that, of course, in the demo kit, both for OData V4 and V2, following these links then, when the slides are shared. And in the demo, I will show two tables, actually, master detail like sales orders with line items, different table controls based on OData V2 service and ABAP backend. First, I will do the feature demo, and then run the demo again with some breakpoints in the coding so that we can have a look how these APIs, which are just described, look like. So go to the browser. And here we have the application. So you already see here a responsive table on top showing the sales orders. Here we have one inline creation row. This is the topmost one. The status is this column uses the context APIs, is inactive, is transient, to find out about the status of this row. So this one is the inline creation row, which is still inactive. And the other ones with the cloud icon are those which are already read from the server and persisted there. And now on property change, this row will going to be activated. So when I enter some node here, and as soon as I tap out of the field, to-while binding will write the property to the model. Yeah, this is considered a property change, and on this create activate event is fired, and the application coding will create a new inline creation row and not cancel the activation, so that we will see this row will be activated. So I tap out, and this happens. So you see the row is now active. It's a transient row, not saved to the server yet, not persisted yet. And we have a new inline creation row underneath, so that you could continue quickly and create new entities, yeah, in a very efficient fashion. Yeah, one thing I want to mention is also that you can have do this in different table controls. So this is a responsive table where you don't see the end of the table, so to say. You have to repeatedly press this more button to see it. So that's why it's a good decision, also taking inferior elements, to have the inline creation rows on top of the table, yeah, because you otherwise would have to scroll down to see them. And now with the grid table we have here for the sales order items, different table control. I have shown a sample where you have them at the end, and also shown that you can have more than one inline creation row if you like. Yeah, so this sample here shows that there are 2 inline creation rows, and they behave the same. And here we have this required properties. So for sales order line item, you need a product ID for the creation. So when I change the quantity and tap out, normally it would be activated, but the application coding cancels the event, so the row stays inactive. Yeah, and even when I change the unit, this will be the same. But as soon as I enter some product here and tap out, the row is going to be activated. All required properties, the product ID is there, and a new inline creation row is created, so that you always have 2 inline creation rows. So that's it. In essence, maybe one thing, I can press reset changes, so that you see that the activated rows will disappear, and also pending changes in the inline creation rows will disappear. But the inline creation rows themselves will stay when you reset changes on the model. So all the active things are gone, all user input is gone, but the inactive rows will stay. That's important to know. And now I would say I run the same with the debugger. And we'll first stop in the initialization. So I press just refresh. So it's based on TypeScript, as we see. Yeah, and the transpilation, all this stuff runs in the background, I think. Yeah, that's why it takes a while. But now we are in the initialization, so we see how the inline creation rows are initially created in the application coding. First for the sales orders table, you get yourself the list binding here. Then next step, here this inline creation row in this helper method is created. And this false means it is created at the beginning. So have this flag to determine where the inline creation row appears. And as a little tweak, we have to do this only when data is received for the table. Yeah, this is there because you otherwise would synchronously see this inline creation row and then wait for the data to come from the server. And only when this appears, the other rows would be visible. So you have some kind of flickering effect. So by attaching to data received, it is a trick to only see the table at once. Yeah, so once the data from the server is already there, so the inline creation rows and the data from the server. The same is done actually for the items table. You have here the rows aggregation, and here we do the same. We do some trick to ensure that this survives the context change. So if the selection changes, we would not create inline creation rows. This is what this data request is good for. And this data received will then do the same actually as I had explained for the sales orders table. It waits for data from the server and is you ensure that the selection is still valid, so that you did not load the line items for some previous selection of a sales order. That's what this if is good for. And you only create the inline creation rows once all data is loaded, because you have to see the last entry in the table, and only then you can underneath create the inline creation rows if they are at the end. That's why this length final is there. Yeah. So that's the initialization actually, and now we are in the place where the data is received. Yeah, and the first inline creation row is created for the sales orders table. And here you see the call to this create API I had mentioned, with this inactive parameter set to true, some default values. And here you have to see that this at end parameter is false, so that the inline creation row will appear at the beginning of the table, as you can see. And yeah, for the items, and now do actually the same for the items table. Once I select the sales order, the items for the sales orders are displayed, and I create an inactive line item by getting myself the list binding, and also calling this create API with this inactive parameter. And now, yeah, the virtual coffee corner. Yeah, okay. Now we have this be at end parameter set to true, so that the inline creation row is at the end, and we have two inline creation rows, as you might remember, so that this is called twice. And now we can have a short look at how this activation happens. And so for the line item, we have these required properties. So I just filled the quantity now, and you see that the product ID is required, and as it's not there in the context, which is part of the event payload, we prevent the default. This cancels the event, and the row stays inactive. Yeah? And when I now fill in this, the product ID, the whole thing will go through, and the row is activated. Yeah, and a new inline creation row is created. Yeah, that's actually it for my demo and for the APIs shown in the debugger. But this is live, yeah, so you can see how it works. And I would now hand over to Uwe for the demo and the talk on the create. Thank you.
Where's the mouse cursor? Here it is. Yeah. So I think I have to step out a bit, but unfortunately, the steep create feature is a little bit easier. Yeah, what's it about? Once again, mostly identical for OData V4 and OData V2. I'm going to show it with an OData V4 application. And the idea is typically you have to create some documents with a series of items, as we just saw. And these backend interfaces, especially if you do not use draft mode, these backend interfaces expect them all at once, or at least it's a huge performance impact. And so we'd like to have the opportunity to send all these data with one request, and this is the deep create request. Yeah, once again, we are technically using the OData list binding create for this deep create. And basically what we do is that we have the object page for the document and the items. And this object page now gets some transient context for a new document as binding context. And basically that's it. So just a short demo with an app which will become part of the demo kit. I won't show any code because it's the boring ES5 code anyway, because it's part of the demo kit. What's that? I think, never mind. Yeah, so this application has two views, a list view and a detail view. And by selecting a row in the list view, I get to the detail page, which now, of course, has this sales order as binding context, and so it shows all data of the sales order. And if I change anything now, I will get the expected patch, post, or delete requests. I'm not going to show it now. So let's get back to the list page, where I have difficulties to see the mouse cursor. So here we are. Oh, the create button is just visible. So now I press this create. And once again, I switch to the detail view, but now I have this newly created context for the sales order as the binding context for my view. And just a short tag. I'm going to, oops, make this keyboard. So I'm just going to prevent that it's going to be sent, and I will use the F12 again. But now, in order to look at the OData requests, where are we? We have 5 OData requests. Here we are. So if I now press save, this thing is in my way anyway. So we'll put it below there. So if I press save now, I will get a request, which is of course requested now. I didn't want it to go through. And if I look at the request, I see here in the body, oh, that's the response. In the request body, a simple request for the sales order itself. So it's not a deep request yet. So how does it become a deep request? I simply create a row in the items table. This is somehow pre-filled, so I can simply press save again. Of course, it's still rejected. But if I now look at the request, hello, it's still running? No, can't be. Well, you would see that is now a deep request. What's going on? I didn't see what's happening. Once again, there we are. But it doesn't open up. Ah, there we are. So now we have the body again. We must make it larger now. And now we have the properties of the sales order, and now we and have a list of items, our deep request. I still use the same view as before for editing this table, and so basically only by applying a transient context to our view as binding context, I achieved that I get a deep request. And now, while the request is still pending, I can now modify data, perhaps create another item, and delete this one again. I have to select it. Oh, I really have difficult to find the cursor here. So, and delete it, and perhaps create another one. Never mind the details. And if I press save now, it should go through. And we get a request here, our deep request, as we already saw. And never mind, that can't open it. But we also see that now the item position has been filled out. This came from the response. So the response has been processed. We also see that we got buyer name here. This wasn't part of the deep request response. It was requested afterwards to fill the missing data. And basically, that's it. And if I now would change again something and press save, I get a patch request. So it can be immediately it can immediately be used to modify this requested created sales order further. And basically, that's it. Yeah, just one link. So we have, of course, some documentation, the demo kits, and this application. Once the demo kit will show 1.116 will also be available in demo kit. If you click on samples and search for OData V4. Also OData V2.
Okay. Great. Thanks, the two of you. Do we have any questions?
Hi, thanks for them and nice features. Just one question. Could you please show how you bind the status when you create the new, like this quick stuff, how you bind it?
Yeah, this is via these context APIs, but we also have some binding expressions for that. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I think this would be possible. Sorry, it's not visual code. It's that strong, but okay. This is via binding expression in the view. So here we have this table and the status column. This is what you're interested in, and this is actually the trick. Yeah, I mean, you can do it, of course, with a formatter, but this is a special binding expression which we have introduced following a nice idea. Yeah, it's not that new. I think in OData V4 they already have it. Things like this. So this add $UI5. This is some kind of prefix for model internal information, and we it should be. Yeah, you find it.
Can you just go back to the page I just opened in the end?
I think for OData V4,
it was for OData V4, but OData V2 documented it too.
Of course, you could also write. I mean, this is the elegant way of doing things. You could also write some formatter, but in essence, of course, these expressions give you the right point in time when the status changes. So the formatter is called exactly in the point in time when is transient or is inactive is changed, and then the formatter can make this status icon in the tooltip out of it. Yeah. So Uwe, when you find the documentation, but it's in the documentation for sure. Yeah.
Where are we?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we just recently started this Data V2 model, so that you can also have binding expressions. You don't have to write code for everything. Yeah, this is sometimes quite convenient, I would say. Yeah.
I managed to find the cursor again.
Yeah, I trust you.
You trust me, yeah.
Last time.
Okay.
Anyway, in the expert corner, so we can have it.
Yeah, exactly. We are just going to this expert corner afterwards. Yeah. Any further questions?
No further questions? Okay, great. Then I think we can stop in time. Thanks very much for your attendance. Thanks for the presentation. Really interesting. And have fun at UI5con. Thank you.